We had a survivor that was in real trouble, and the logistics to get her out was really complicated.
You weren't just jumping into the fire. You did this in partnership, learning from survivor leaders on our team.
She would say, as a survivor, this is what the survivor is going through and how we can respond in a trauma-informed way.
When you're listening to them rather than talking over them is helping invite them into the decision-making process.
They really want to be heard, and they really want to know that there's someone on their side.
There was a survivor who barricaded herself, and Lora just calmly and patiently spoke with her.
I look back at all of the opportunities that we could have written her off.
When we step into their stories, that's where transformation happens.
These survivors have been failed by systems over and over again.
I can't tell them that everything's going to be okay.
What is that one thing that you would want every American to do?
Every American?
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Team Protectors podcast. My name is Brittany Dunn. I am the COO and co-founder of Safe House Project, joined today by my co-host.
I'm Christy Wells. I am the CEO and the other co-founder of Safe House Project. For those of you who don't know us, Safe House Project is a national anti-trafficking organization that helps train people to identify and respond to trafficking, helps victims escape their trafficking situation and find healing through safe housing, and ultimately is working to unite communities across America to see trafficking eradicated by 2030. That's not a statement of what we can do. It's a call to action, and we invite you to be part of it and join us.
Awesome. Well, I am so excited to introduce you all to our guest today, the famous, incredible, just talented,
wonderful, amazing,
wonderful,
perfect,
compassionate. I mean, there has been every positive adjective in the entire world used to describe the one, the only Lora Trent.
Wow. And now she's blushing.
So Lora leads the Safe House Project Survivor Support Team and has been just the heartbeat of the organization for so many years. So we are so blessed to have you here today.
Thank you. It's an honor, really. It is to be a part of this organization. It's an absolute joy.
So talk to us about, or share with the audience more about how in the world you ended up here.
Right. There's a story.
There's always a story.
Yes.
It's a great story.
Brittany and I used to work together.
Right.
In fact, it was her very first job out of college. And so the two of us worked together for about a decade. And then I ended up going back to school. I ended up getting my college degree from Oglethorpe University later in life. And so I remember my senior year, I was in a media studies class. And part of my final was to write a paper on something that I saw in the news and if it was true. Right? It was kind of in the era of fake news, right? So the theme was, is it fake news?
Sure.
Has that changed?
No.
Different topic.
Different topic. No, it has not changed. Anyway, so strangely, and I really don't even remember how I stumbled across this article, but there was an article that said, if you want to tackle the problem of sex trafficking, you should look at porn addiction. That there is a three-part cause and effect. That porn addiction is on the rise, which is feeding the sex industry, which of course brings a need to bring in more victims and feed the world of trafficking. So I decided to do my final on that. And I needed to do research, not just from different news outlets that we see or articles that we read, but I had to really dig deep. And it ends up to be true.
Sure.
It was a very interesting project, and I learned a lot. And then I graduate from college, I come back to work, and on the first day back, Brittany announces that she's leaving the company. And you said, I'm going to start an organization that is, our goal is to fight and end sex trafficking. And I looked at her and thought, wow, I just did a paper on that. And I had no idea really 6 months prior that sex trafficking was as big and as close to home as it is. And so I kept in touch with you guys virtually, right? And I followed you online to see how the organization was doing. And a few years later, I was looking for a new career, and I reached out to say, hey, maybe I could volunteer for you guys while I'm looking for another job. So we set up a Zoom call, and Christy offered me a job. And I thought, oh, maybe you misread the email. I actually was just wanting to volunteer. But we talked through it, and we kind of came up with an agreement that I would that I would work while I was looking for another job. Which, by the way, I haven't.
How many years has that been?
Yeah, that was in 2020.
Great.
A few weeks after I started, the whole world shut down, and so things were very different. And as you know, I was hired just to plan events. And during the year of COVID, I gained the skill of planning and canceling events.
You were phenomenal.
I got really good at getting the money back. Right?
Yes. Yep.
Anyway,
Guard those donor dollars, Laura.
Right. Yep, that's right. So fast forward a few years into it, I really found myself more and more not wanting to go back into the corporate world. I really felt a great amount of purpose to work for Safe House Project. And then I ended up in survivor support because there was a complicated situation that really needed help. And we had a survivor that was in real trouble. And the logistics to get her out and to get her from one really rural town to another that was clear across the U.S. was really complicated. And so I stepped into that. And I was able to use my skills that I had in my old job. So my old job was working with executives and planning trips around the world. I planned parties and leadership meetings all around the world. And the itineraries that I set started when the executive left their house and ended when they got home. So I was so detailed about what time your driver shows up, what time your flight is, what you should pack, what the weather's going to be. When you get off the plane, here's your new driver, and here's the confirmation number. Here's the time that it's going to be. Here's where you go next. Here's the directions. Here's your meal. And I had to be really, really careful and detail-oriented in that job because we had a lot of different personalities. They had very busy schedules. We had to be sensitive to those that had religious right? Sorry, I was losing the word. And cultural differences. And so then fast forward, when I ended up working with this survivor, I was able to bring back that skill into this job and help this survivor get out of the hospital, get into the car, to the airport, take 2 different layovers, get her to the safe house, and that's kind of what started my journey. Then after that, I would work on others here and there, but I really found that I was able to use my skill in a way that I didn't really expect.
Yeah. So at that time, I was doing a lot of the placements for survivors into safe homes, as was a survivor leader on our team. And we recognized that there was an ever-growing need to see more survivors served, and that was going to require a dedicated role. And there was the initial conversation of, do we hire outside of the organization? And then thinking about Laura and these couple of times that she would step in more on the logistics side. But remember, there was one time there was a survivor who was traveling and I was traveling. Survivor had barricaded herself into the bathroom at the airport after getting through security. And Laura just calmly and patiently spoke with her and got her on the plane and gave her the courage just through that conversation. And so when we thought about looking outside, we thought, well, why don't we talk to Laura about this role and if this is something that she would do, because she's just so good and so patient and so compassionate. And she said yes. And so, which was
I remember
great.
That day vividly.
And I will tell you that in her first year, she served 534 survivors, which was double more than double what had been done the year prior. And she treated everybody with the same level of compassion and care. But you weren't just doing this and jumping into the fire. You did this in partnership learning.
Absolutely.
From survivor leaders on our team. So talk about that process and learning and what that looked like.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, I vividly remember that day when we were working with that survivor that was in the airport. And I was so honored that she was able to be vulnerable with me in that way.
Yeah.
Right. And I was so thankful that I was able to say the right words to get her on that plane. But when I started this role, I feel like I can remember specific areas where I was feeling like I could have done differently, right? I would get off the phone and say, I could have done that differently. I could have said that differently. So I definitely was quickly learning. And I think the biggest thing was working with one of our survivor leaders, because what we would do is we would together work on these cases. She would say, as a survivor, this is what the survivor is going through. This is what she's thinking. This is probably what she's going to say next, and this is why, right? And that was huge for me. And there would be things that would happen that I wouldn't understand because I'm not a survivor, right? I'm not a survivor of trafficking, so I've never been in her shoes. And so I would ask our survivor leader, tell me how I can respond to this situation. Tell me how I can better approach her trauma. And in fact, the survivor leader that we have on staff is the one that with us wrote our entire placements manual, which is about 75 pages. It's very detailed, and it goes over every single situation that could come our way and how we can respond and how we should respond in a trauma-informed way. Because when I started this job, I didn't really even know what the term trauma-informed meant, right? Because as I said, I have a business degree. So I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm not a social worker. However, we do have several on staff that I lean on. But I believe that trauma-informed to me, and that moment and now, means that even though I have never walked in their shoes, even though I'm not a survivor of trafficking, I can listen to them. I can hear what they're saying, and I can be the rock for them if they need it, right? And what I mean by that is when we receive calls from individuals where their life is on fire, right? And we receive calls from men and women who are experiencing homelessness. They're cold, they're hungry, they're scared. And they just want shelter and safety and a meal, right? But what I realized is that more than that, they really want to be heard.
Yeah.
And they really want to know that there's someone on their side.
Right.
And so in the beginning, when I would start to place survivors, I would quickly dive in. Right? I would say, oh, I have these resources. I know the perfect safe house. I'm going to go ahead and call them and they have availability. Okay, this is great. And there's a flight and I see that I could put you in an Uber or a bus or a train and I've got it all taken care of. I'll do it on the phone and quick. And then at the end of the day, pat myself on the back because I did such a great job, right? And that was wrong. Because what happened in those cases is that the individual didn't end up staying. And I would say, why? What could I have done differently? And really, the one thing is that I needed to listen, right? So now when I'm on the phone, this is how I coach my team, but also I do this every single day. I always say a prayer before I get on the phone with a survivor. And I always just say, God, just give me the words to say. But more than that, help me through the struggle of wanting to talk.
Yeah.
Because that's a struggle for me.
Well, I think it's such a great point because listening is so key. I mean, the survivors have had everything taken from them, their personal agency, their personal autonomy, just the opportunity to have choices. And so what you're doing when you're listening to them rather than talking over them is helping invite them into the decision-making process.
Absolutely.
Which is what trauma-informed, survivor-centered care is. It's letting them choose their future. How do they want to journey in freedom? And I think that those early days and probably those early misses, sometimes we don't want to fail. But as long as we're failing forward and we're constantly reevaluating where did we have those minor misses and how can we constantly improve, I think it keeps us in a posture of humility and servant leadership.
Absolutely.
And I really see that come through your team, because every day or every week, the stories that come out of your team are like, okay, this was a really hard case. This was a new twist on maybe a different circumstance.
Sure.
And you all are walking alongside each other, debriefing these cases and figuring out, well, how can we constantly improve? And I think that's just, that teachable spirit is something that I really value in the way that you lead.
Yes, thank you.
So let's walk it back a little bit more, because there might be some people who don't understand a little bit of what this process looks like. So we get calls from folks from law enforcement, from healthcare, sometimes from survivors themselves. What are they saying? What are they needing? And what do you all do?
So you're right. Most of we do get calls from survivors, law enforcement, healthcare, caseworkers. Most of the calls that we get are from the survivors themselves, and they can either reach us on the response line or via the referral form online. But right, so we have that first conversation. We have that first conversation that, as we had just said, to listen, right? We now know the basics if we've seen the referral form to understand who they are and where they're at.
And are they looking to exit their trafficking situation?
Sometimes.
Is that okay?
Sometimes. Sometimes we have individuals that call in that just want to know more. I got a call the other
They're
day.
testing the waters.
That's right. And I got a call the other day from a survivor that says, I'm not ready for placement, but I saw your webinar, and I want you to know that by watching you, Lora, on your webinar, I know that you understand where I'm at. I know that Safe House Project offers resources that can help me when I'm ready. And that meant the world to me, because I don't actually remember exactly what I said in this webinar, but that's what I meant. Right?
Right.
That's the message that I meant. And so to answer your question, like, some of the survivors that call in are in an emergency situation, actively trying to leave their trafficker. Sometimes they have been trafficked 10 years ago and they still can't seem to get past the pain. And so they reach out to us to see, is there any resources that you have to help? So we connect with safe houses across the nation, and our database is growing every single day. And we have safe houses that offer short-term programs, which are more 30 to 90 days, long-term programs, which are 12 to 24 months. And then we have transitional housing, which is for those who have already completed some season of healing, but want independent living, but still in a community of support. So in the moment that we have that first conversation, we try to gauge, like, what is it that you're looking for? Knowing that the need that you might have right now is going to be different from the need that you have in 30 days or even 6 months. And so we try to understand, what are the obstacles that you have before you? Some of them are struggling with addiction. Some of them are struggling with severe mental health. They might have a service dog or an emotional support cat, or they might have a child or 5, right? They might be pregnant. They might be in a wheelchair. So we get calls of all sorts. And so we take a look at really the whole person to understand who they are. And then we try to listen to see, what kind of compromises are you wanting to make for the sake of your safety? Sometimes, like you said, they just want to hear what their options are.
Right.
And they might not be ready to pull the trigger. That's fine. Save my number. Because when you are ready, I want you to call me, and I'm ready to work with you. And sometimes that placement is a several-step process. Right. For example, if they are struggling with addiction, and especially if they're actively using, we'll try to recommend a detox so that they can go there first. Then from there, they can go into a program. Same with mental health stabilization. So it doesn't always end up to be a quick one placement, move on.
Right.
Really what we're trying to do is to let them know that we're here, to let them know that our resources are available to them today and 5 years, 10 years from today, in whatever level of healing and whatever journey that they're on.
I think what that just shows is how intentional your team is about not just treating people as numbers. It's not about calls to the warm line or a count at the end of the year. It's about every single person that chooses to have that 10 seconds of insane courage to pick up the phone and ask for help. And then you all journey with them. You're there. I know you get a lot of messages after the fact of all of their successes. Can you share with our audience just some of those words of encouragement that have come back?
I can share stories until...
For hours.
For hours, yes.
Days, I'm
It
pretty
is the
sure.
most difficult thing to choose one. I think I'll share one that I would say started out to be the most difficult. So we have an individual that we are still continuing to serve. We started serving her when she was 16. It is by far the most horrific story of abuse and neglect that I have ever read about. In fact, when the case came to me, the profile was about 5 to 7 pages long, and it took me about a week to finish it. It was heartbreaking and gross. And so now I know the story of this young girl and her history of abuse. Then I enter into the story of her as a teenager, an aggressive teenager, behind in school, addicted to drugs, severe mental health, and really a history of strong aggression. And at that time when I met her virtually, she was locked up in detention center for an assault charge because she basically beat the crap out of a dude that was trying to take advantage of her. And so that, along with the other charges that she had previously, she was in detention center. I spoke with a probation officer who was not willing to wiggle and put her into a program. In fact, what he said was, she needs to learn how to behave. Because right now she's in isolation for pulling the hair out of someone who she says was catcalling her. So what he saw was an aggressive teenager that just needed to behave, right? But what I saw was an individual who was acting out because of the trauma that she had experienced, right? And so I ended up interacting with an attorney and with a big heart that would represent her, and a judge that was willing to listen. So I participated in one of the hearings virtually. The judge put me on Zoom, and he said, "Lora, I don't know anything about the programs that you're about to tell me about, but I really want to learn." And so I just told him about several programs that had availability, several programs that said they could help her, several programs that wanted to welcome her. And I said, "And if you approve, I can get her there with a chaperone, no doubt." So it took a lot of praying, right? It took a lot of phone calls. It took a lot of convincing because there were so many things involved, so many obstacles, but we were able to place her. And when we got through the ICPC process.
What's an ICPC?
An ICPC is an interstate compact. It's basically a document that says I have Jane Doe child in one state that's leaving my state and going to a new state, right? So for example, if Jane Doe is going from Kansas to Alabama, then the document is signed by a judge and signed to say, this child I recognize leaving my state, going to a new state. So now everybody knows not only that she's moving to a different state, but why, for how long, and who's in charge. Who's in charge of her, who's in charge of her medical care, who's in charge of her expenses, and what happens if she leaves such program? How are we going to get her back? So that's basically an ICPC. So anyway, so we worked through the entire process. It took months. We ended up getting her placed. And to be honest, even though on paper and through the interviews we thought this was a great placement, it actually didn't turn out to be the perfect fit. So at the 30-day, which we always follow up with our survivors, 30, 60, and 90-day, at the 30-day mark, that was when I realized that she's not progressing like we had thought she would, and she's not happy. She's feeling triggered. She's angry. She ran a few times but came back. So I said, let's work on a second placement. And we did that. We started the process all over, placed her in a different program, and then she ran. So fast forward to her 18th birthday. We didn't know where she was. She went missing, doesn't have a phone, not connected with her family, who, by the way, were the ones that trafficked her. So we didn't know where she was, who she was with, if she was safe, if she was alive. On her 18th birthday, she shows up at the probation officer's office. She says, I want you to call Lora at Safe House Project.
Oh, I just got chills.
She brought me to this program, she says. And at the time, I wasn't ready, but I'm ready now. And I know that this program that I was at not only had a youth program, the one I ran from, but they have an adult program. And do you think you could ask Lora and see if I can go back? So, of course, they called me. I'm like, I'll call them right now. And the program themselves, they're like, yes, absolutely. Well, absolutely. Get her here. She could come today. They were so excited. They were so excited because they wanted her to heal. Mm-hmm. She just wasn't ready.
Right.
She's still there today.
That's amazing.
So we got her on a plane, got her to the program, back to the program. And then at her 30-day, at that program, at the last one, she responded to our call to say, hey, how's it going? She sent the most beautiful email. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes because she's like, I'm getting my GED. I'm going to church. I'm learning what real and healthy relationships are. I'm learning how to forgive my family.
Wow.
I'm learning how to understand that the trauma that I went through before doesn't have to define me now. And so that's just one case, right? One case that our team has worked with for several years. And to see her on her journey, I look back at all of the opportunities that we could have written her off, right?
Right.
Oh, you ran, so you must not care. Oh, you're being aggressive. You must not want to stay out of jail, right?
I feel like what you're sharing is so important for anybody out there who's listening that's an educator, that's in our working for a child protection agency, who's in our judicial system, law enforcement, and honestly, everyday community members. This is the power of not giving up on people.
Right.
You know, seeing past behaviors into experience and really seeing people and meeting them where they're at. And I think that what you demonstrate is so beautiful because it shows that when we go past our preconceived notions of people and we learn and we step into their stories and step into the mess, that's where transformation happens. It doesn't happen overnight. It can take years.
Yes.
But it all comes down to that we just can't give up on each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think you brought up a great point earlier, talking about some of the people who call and they just want to know their options. They're testing the waters. And I think that's something that's hard sometimes for people to understand if they don't work in this field, because it's easy to think, well, they've escaped. And so don't they just want out? And my mom always says it's easier to stay in the hell of a predictable situation than risk the joy of an unpredictable one. And the fact is, these survivors have been failed by systems over and over and over again. And they don't believe that if they leave, that there's going to be someone there to catch them.
Right.
How have you guys worked to push against that narrative? You spoke to it a little bit already in the Save My Number conversation. But how have you guys had seen that in where people don't trust systems to catch them?
Sure.
And how have you guys worked to, again, combat that narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we deal with that every single day.
Right.
I agree with your mom. I always say that I have faith in God. If God could just tell me how this is going to play out, which I realize is not faith at all. But if you could just tell me how this is going to end up, I'll follow you. That's what's going on in my head. Right. And that's what the individuals that we work with, that's what they're going through. They're like, that sounds great, Lora. That safe house sounds awesome. You mean that they're going to be able to give me medical care and help with my mental health and spiritual health? You mean they'll be able to help me become financially independent and go back to school if I want to, get a job if I want to? That sounds awesome. But still, I don't know if I can do that, is what they often say. I've been on the phone with survivors for over an hour. And really, my goal in that moment is to just gain their trust.
Right.
Because I can't tell them that everything's going to be okay. I can't tell them that when I put you on the plane and get you to the safe house, that your life is going to be glorious.
It's a journey.
It is a journey. I can tell you, though, that you should save my number, right? Yeah. And if you don't like it there, you should call me. Mm-hmm. And I always encourage them, don't get triggered, leave and call me from a street corner. Call me from the program and let's work through it together.
Right.
Often they call me from a street corner, and that's okay too. That just makes it more difficult in the moment.
Right. So as you've really learned this field over the past few years and worked alongside hundreds of programs, thousands upon thousands of survivors now, where are some of the opportunities for growth? Where are we seeing challenges that we need new solutions?
I would say that it's offering resources to those with severe mental health and with addiction. If we wanted a safe house that could help an individual that doesn't have a struggle with substance abuse and doesn't have severe mental health, I don't know that I have a survivor that even fits that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I'm not saying you have to do everything. I'm saying recognize that the struggles that these individuals have faced before they entered in your door, and partner with behavioral health, partner with the resources in your area so that you could pass those resources on to the survivor. Because I really think that if you don't have those additional resources, then you're literally just offering a safe house.
Right.
But the safe houses that we work with are designed, or they should be designed, right? Say that they're designed to help a survivor to get to a place where they are completely financially independent. And there's a lot that has to happen in that process.
You kind of touched on it, but I want to hone in on one point there. Can you speak to how Safe House Project certifies programs and just the importance of knowing what are the core competencies of these Safe House programs?
Oh, sure. And what's amazing is that when we work with the programs in our database, most of them I've never stepped foot in. Mm-hmm. The certified programs, I could say that we've not only walked the halls of these safe houses, but we've met with their leadership. We know that they're trauma-informed. We know the staff. We know what they're licensed to do. We know what they do with their money. We know how they get their money. And we also always, in a site visit that we have for certification, we always bring a survivor.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's crucial because I think that in anything that we do, we should always have a survivor with us to allow us to go down a path that is truly going in the direction towards their healing. And so the programs that we've certified, I think that it's really been a journey for both of us, right? Because I think that some of the first programs that we certified, they were able to see areas that they needed to improve on. Mm-hmm. It's not about, oh, this program's great and we should advertise that. Mm-hmm. That's just not how it works. But instead, we really go deep. We really go deep into the resources that they offer, how they offer them, and we look at even grievance forms that maybe we've received, if we've received any, comments from other survivors who've even lived there, comments from staff that work there, and we really do a deep dive to understand the environment that they offer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. I just think it's so important for people to understand that what survivor empowerment looks like. What does survivor-centered mean? And it means that that we are leading from the guidance of the survivor community.
Absolutely.
And I think that Safe House Certification has done a beautiful job having been written by survivors, having survivors be on those site visits, and then also serve on our certification review board. It really makes sure that we're keeping them at the focus of everything we do.
And our training.
Yeah.
Our training was written by survivors.
Right.
And we see the fruits of that every single day.
Yep.
I think we're, over 450,000 people have been trained?
Yep.
And it's working, right? Because my phone keeps ringing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the part of our team is doing their job really well, and your team is going to stay busy forever.
Absolutely. And I even have a story, if I may. I shared this before at an event recently, but I love this story because on Thanksgiving Day, I received a call from our HSI dedicated line. And the individual that...
What is HSI?
Homeland Security.
Thank you.
Homeland Security Investigations.
I said Homeland Security. I'm like, wait, what's the I for? So apparently I don't know. But anyway, so it's funny because Brittany had actually led a training, and as she does many, and this individual that went to that training had a woman in the back of his law enforcement vehicle and a newborn baby. And because he went through that training, he knew who to call. And so on Thanksgiving Day, I received a phone call from the HSI line. And when I talked to this woman, it was so clear that this law enforcement officer could have seen her differently, right? He could have seen her as a repeat offender, as a known addict, as a woman that has quite a record and has already lost custody of several of her children. He could have seen her different. But instead, in that moment, he saw her as a victim. As he pulled her out, her and her newborn baby, pulled them out of a really dangerous situation. And so he gave her my number. We end up talking through the situation, got her into an emergency shelter that night, got her into a short-term program. She left the next day. And then now she's in a long-term program with her and her baby. It could have ended different. Right? It could have ended different. And I look back so many opportunities that we have when we're interacting with survivors, that if we would have stepped back and not judged them for the crimes that they may have committed and understand that there's more to her story or his story, then we can be so helpful in getting them into a journey of healing.
Yes. You said his story. We know that obviously trafficking happens to men and women, boys and girls. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the men's side, from asking for help, the resources that are in the United States, and maybe where some of those complications come in.
Yeah, I think, it's a challenge because there's not a great amount of resources. We don't receive a huge percentage of male survivors because we serve all ages, all genders. We ended up, I think the youngest survivor we have served is a 6-year-old boy. But we also serve like teenage boys, adult men, and at all stages of their trauma and healing. So what we do is we try, obviously to hear where they're at, to hear the struggle that they've been through. And most of the time when they start the conversation, they expect me not to believe them. It's really almost on the money. The first thing they'll say is, I'm being trafficked and I know you don't believe me. Or no, really, this is happening. This one boy said to me, he had just turned 18, and he said, I know what you're thinking, that this only happens to girls. That's what my mom said. My mom said that only happens to girls. And I said, well, your mom doesn't understand, but let's help her understand. Right? And so he gave me permission, because now he's 18, he gave me permission to talk to the mom, and together we came up with a plan. For this individual, we were not able to find a program that was a good fit for him. However, he was so buried in his addiction to alcohol that we decided, okay, first step, we usually go to detox. Let's for you, first step. He went into a longer inpatient program that led him to sober living, which he's actually there right now. And what we were able to do is once he got to sober living, we were able to get him non-residential services, right? Wraparound services that were able to come into the sober living and provide him the therapy that he needed. And I do think that even though, I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's maybe close to 5% or less, that you would probably know, the data queen, of how many male survivors we serve. But I think that number is skewed. And I know that we've talked about that before because it seems like there's such a small percentage of survivors, but I believe that small percentage is the survivors that are actually calling.
Right. It's the underrepresentation.
Yes.
And we see that in so many different areas. And I think that's really an important piece to remember is that identification rates are at 1%. And so it's really critical that we all become the eyes and ears of our community and simply report suspected trafficking to increase those identifications, because the more people that we identify, the better idea we're going to have about who is this actually affecting?
Right.
What are those underserved populations, whether it's male, whether it's individuals within our tribal communities, those who are, more isolated. There's a lot of factors and unknowns. And so I think we always have to hold the data loosely and recognize for where it is at this moment as a guide on a much bigger discovery. And so data is critical to drive decision making, but it isn't the end. It's not the end state. It's
Agreed.
Truly a guide. It's about listening to the survivors and making sure that they are helping inform our next steps.
Sure. Agreed.
Now, you've talked a little bit about the process that you guys go through. Why is the process that you all do in placements for survivors better than other things that are out there where they have maybe a list of resources that somebody can call? Why is that hands-on approach different when it comes to maybe success rates for the survivors?
I think because we try to virtually hold their hand throughout the whole process. Okay, an analogy just came to my head, and stick with me here. I don't know why it came to my head. I went into a store one day, and I was trying to find an outfit. And I went into this store, tried on everything I wanted, left empty-handed. I went the following day and said, I really need help. And someone walked me through the process of, this is what we have. You should try this. Have you tried this? And I walked out with exactly what I needed. I know that sounds really superficial, but it really is that simple. Right? It really is that simple, because we are not, to give them a list of numbers, we're not the first person that they've called.
Right.
They've already received that list of numbers. They've already called those numbers. Right. But, and even if I give them, say, oh, hey, you're looking for long-term? Here's 5 places. Call them. That's not helpful, because they don't know what the application process is like. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what the timeline is. They don't know the chances of getting in. They don't know how they would get there. And so there's so many barriers just for them to understand what to expect, that if all I say is, instead how I respond is, after we've gotten to know each other, and we understand what the need is and the compromises that she's willing to make. And then I just get onto my database and I pull up a few programs.
Right.
Let's talk about them. Let's talk about some examples. Before we even dive in, let's talk about what this could look like. And then I'll say a few things. I'll say, here's a program in, St. Louis, Missouri, or whatever. And I'll describe the program. I'll describe the services. And then I'll say, what do you think about that? Like, is anything I said seem to be resonating with you? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you want more examples? And that kind of opens up the conversation so that I can really get to know them better. And then they have a comfort level with me that allows them to trust me and to continue and to take that step.
So as we move towards a close, what is that one thing that you would want every American to do coming out to help support survivors?
Every American?
Every American.
Wow, that's a big ask. I would say that every American has a skill that could help victims of trafficking. And you might not know what that skill is, right? And I would encourage them to just pray into it if they are someone of prayer. Because I think that if you're trying to help victims of trafficking for a better title or a better salary or a pat on the back, then this really isn't the industry, right? But instead, if you're looking to actually help someone in need, you could really discern on how you can enter into that. And I would say the first step would be take our training.
Right.
Because when you take our training, you understand what trafficking is, what it looks like, how you can respond, and how you can be effective in that response.
Yeah. I'm going to throw one more question in.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, she's throwing me off.
If you could say anything to somebody who is thinking about trying to leave their trafficking situation and is scared, what would you say?
Can I put my number on this podcast? My number is 507-444-1518. Save my number. Call us, right? Or go to our website and click Get Help Now. And know that we're there. Mm-hmm. And know that we care. And know that even in that moment, if you call us and you don't want to act on it, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Because know that the next time you can call us and maybe then we can work together to get you placed.
Well, Lora, thank you for sharing your heart and sharing just how this organization has come alongside so many survivors. It's truly a blessing to see not every story come out. I think that's just the beauty. Every day is like testimony after testimony of these survivor stories. And that's attributed to the incredible work of you and your team. So
it's so beautiful. And I do have to say that when I enter into conversations with survivors, I never enter into a conversation with a survivor with the goal to like save them or rescue them, because I believe that implies that I'm better than they are. And I'm not. That's just simply not true. In fact, when I enter into conversations with survivors and with the understanding that if open to it, I can actually learn a lot from them, I walk away so fulfilled. And so it really is an honor that they allow me into their vulnerability. And I just thank you guys for giving me the opportunity, because I never would have asked for this job. I literally never would have thought that I would want it, and certainly never would have known that I'm good at it. And it turns out that I am. And I just love my job. And I tell you guys all the time that my job is way better than yours. So much better than yours. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. So as we come to a close, take the training. Go to iamonwatch.org and educate yourself. But then download Simply Report so that you have the tool at your fingertips to report suspected trafficking that might be happening in your community. We can't do this alone. The only way that we can unite to eradicate human trafficking in the United States is by every single person taking just one step. Mm-hmm. So we encourage you to become part of Team Protectors, to become part of this movement. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.